Hey guys, it's Sammy Warrayat, the host of the Successful Millennials podcast. I appreciate you joining in and listening to another episode geared towards proactive and driven millennials born from 1990 to 1997. For those of you who are first-time listeners, welcome. This podcast is specifically geared towards those people born in 1990 to 1997 and are trying to find motivation as well as improve some tactics of how to achieve success in the 5 major categories. I invite you to listen into the journey as I do deep dives, as well as bring in some emerging experts to discuss these categories and our experiences and how to make progress with them. The reason I picked this specific age range is because I wanted to highlight the rise of social media and smartphones technology coming up in the formative years rather than as an established adult. Myself being a millennial in that age range, I was in high school when social media really took off, as well as the iPhone, and that changed the way we grew up almost. Whereas generations who were born outside of that age range either was too young and was born into it, or they were already an adult and kind of fully developed. So what are these 5 categories? In no specific orders of importance, it's money, happiness, career/purpose, relationships, and that covers intimate, familial, and social, as well as health, and that's physical and mental health. Guys, I would love it if you can give me a review or DM me on Instagram at FinanceZilla or email me at financezilla@gmail.com. I would love to hear your feedback as well as topics that you'd like to learn more on or things that I can do better. I am a big fan, as you probably have realized by listening to a few of these episodes, of continuous improvement. So anything that you guys would like to learn more on or things that I could do better on, please let me know. And if you could share it with just one friend who you think that one of these episodes can help them with, that would be greatly appreciated. Thank you guys so much. Now, let's get to the show. Hey, Ted, how are you?
Doing good. How's it going?
I'm doing well. I'm really excited for this conversation. For those people who haven't heard of you, why don't you give a little bit of a background about yourself?
Yeah, sure. First, Sammy, thanks for having me on the show, and shout out to all the listeners. Thanks for continuing to support Sammy and everything he's doing. My name's Ted Phaeton, born and raised out of Long Island, New York. Went to school in upstate New York, SUNY Albany, studied broadcast meteorology. After graduation, had a hard time getting a TV job, but after 3 years, finally got my break, and I had to start my own company to do that. But it worked out. Started off in Saginaw, Michigan. I only survived one winter because it's cold. So then I made it down to South Carolina, where I was a meteorologist and had the opportunity to become an anchor. Transitioning into a morning anchor was a tough transition for me in terms of learning a new skill in front of thousands of people and not feeling confident. So in that space, to build the yin to my yang, I started the podcast, No Rain, No Rainbows. This was in 2017. I started just talking to business owners, mental health coaches, and things like that on what I was going through in my journey in terms of entrepreneurship and mental health and personal growth. And that also led to me talking to a good group of men and getting mentorship there. And that turned into a sub-series, which ended up being its own networking and empowerment group for men called The Modern Man. I run that as well. We've had 3 live conferences, 2 virtual conferences during the pandemic, 3 seasons on YouTube, and we could just continue to kind of break the taboo of men having real conversations, getting deeper than what the score of the game was yesterday, and actually discussing the things that impact us in our lives with the hope and goal of improving ourselves, being better, and solving and crushing male isolation, which I think is a huge problem. So all that led me to really do what I do today, which is a morning meteorologist for Fox Charlotte. I still host my podcast, No Rain, No Rainbows, years later. And The Modern Man is in the process of planning our next live hybrid conference. So it's been a lot. It's a long journey, and I think I'm only getting started.
Yeah, I absolutely love the premise of The Modern Man, and I really want to focus a lot on that. But before we get into that and the importance of vulnerability, showing emotion, things that as males, we've just never really been accepted to do. Talk a little bit about your journey of how is it different from being an anchor where you're live, like you said, in front of thousands versus a recorded environment in a podcast, which you can edit stuff out later, or you can have a more intimate relationship with the person because it's you and them and you don't have to worry about the liveness, if you will.
Yeah, I love that question because a while back when I first started in the career, as many of us who are in podcasting or anyone who's kind of taking the venture of getting in front of the camera, social media or anything like that, when you first do it, it's jarring and it's difficult. The first time I picked up the mic to record a podcast, I actually closed my eyes and I pretended like it was live. And treating it like it was live is really the trick I even use to this day. When we are pre-recorded, we tend to put more weight on the things that we say. So, Sammy, I'm very aware that someone's going to be listening to this at a later time. And the reality is we oftentimes censor ourselves and edit ourselves when we know we can do it. If I were to say something wrong, because this is pre-recorded, I might want to go back and say it again. Whereas live on air, it comes down to two things. And one of my first mentors in the business told me this. He goes, Ted, this broadcasting business comes down to simply two things. One, know what you're talking about. Know the subject matter, be confident in it, make it your own, and make it the information come out like osmosis, like this is a part of you. And number two, trust yourself. Just trust yourself. I have a lot of people like, man, I don't even know what I could talk for 30 minutes about. But if you like video games and I ask you about your favorite video game, you could probably talk 30 minutes straight about it. The issue isn't necessarily can you fill 30 minutes of time with valuable information. It's what information is being asked. So to compare the live and the recorded, to answer you as direct as I can, live is addressing your insecurities, being okay with it, and just putting yourself out there. Recorded, and what I experienced with the podcast is actually sitting in your insecurities longer and being okay with your insecurities in terms of not changing it, silencing them, because you don't have a choice when it's live. Right. You have the choice when it's recorded. And I think that's actually, ironically, what a lot of us would say is it's harder recorded than it is live. Everybody knows that popular saying, Bill O'Reilly, we'll do it live. Because he kept stumbling when it was recorded because he was aware that he could edit himself.
That's a very good point. I equate it to like paper trading in the stock market. Like you kind of have the same idea, the same trading strategy, but you don't have the skin in the game because it's not really your money. Or in this example, right, like you can change certain things and you have to re-listen to your voice, which a lot of people don't like to see on a recorded line. I don't know why. I can't stand my own voice when I listen to it, but I imagine that's how everybody is. But you mentioned the podcast, No Rain, No Rainbows, which I think ties into the modern man and the fact where you have to go through a lot of things, right? You have to push through adversity in order to see the benefit on the other end. What was the genesis of you creating No Rain, No Rainbows? And what have you learned from hosting it for now almost 4 years?
Yeah, man. The genesis of No Rain, No Rainbows was honestly, and this is a huge value add to anyone that's listening, get you some friends that would do this. It was just my friends being like, dude, you going to do it? How many times did we talk about doing something and we just don't do it? Luckily, I had the environment around me and I have the friends around me where I would compare us like we're a group of lions or wolves, we're hunters. Like we want to go, we want to do things. So when we talk about ideas, great, it's received very well and we're dreamers. We love talking about it. We also challenge each other to take action. So I talked about a podcast for a long time and my friend was like, you're going to do it, you're going to do it. And I finally decided, you know what? Yeah, I'm going to do the podcast. I'm going to download the Anchor app and I'm just going to record it on my phone. And my buddy said, dude, I can't let you do this on your phone. Like if you're going to do a podcast, great, you're finally going to do it. But he's a financial advisor. He's been an entrepreneur, serial entrepreneur, very successful for a while. And he's like, this dude just reached out to me asking for mentorship. And he does media. I'm going to charge him. Again, get yourself friends like this. I'm going to charge him for my mentorship working on your podcast. So the trade that he gave, he mentored this good friend. He stood next to me on my wedding day. He mentored him while he worked on my podcast as a videographer. So that was a huge value add because he popped up literally the day after I committed to doing the podcast on my phone is when a videographer popped up.
Isn't that crazy?
Then the next day, a friend of mine who was podcasting, I told him, hey man, I'm taking a jump. I'm going to podcast. He said, well, and he's got the SMB7. He's got the H6 Zoom, which for the listeners and the watchers who aren't familiar with that, that's like creme de la creme podcast equipment. And he's like, well, dude, I'll let you borrow my stuff whenever you need. So I was like, oh, wow. So I have a videographer with a mirrorless Sony 4K camera. Mm-hmm. And I have 2 of the top of the line microphones and a recorder to record the podcast with. All my excuses are out the window because I just committed to doing it and all the tools showed up. Yeah. So I called 4 business owners that I respected in the area. I blocked out a day, literally 5 hours from 12 to 5 p.m. because if I was borrowing this guy's stuff, I knew I wanted guests. I knew I didn't want to borrow his stuff for 3-4 weeks. This is thousands of dollars worth of equipment. I'm not trying to hold on to it. So I said, hey, man, let me pick it up from you on Monday. So I went to him Monday afternoon, picked up the equipment. 12 p.m. on Tuesday, my first guest came, and we recorded 4 guests all the way up until about 4:30, 5 o'clock. And I gave him back his stuff that day, 6 p.m. So I had his stuff for maybe 24 hours. And I had an episode each week. So the first month was done. I borrowed his stuff for 24 hours, 4 times before I had enough money saved up to buy my own equipment. Now I didn't get the top of the line stuff, but I have the Rode Procaster that I'm using to this day, a H4 Zoom. I actually sold my old camera from a previous business I started. I got that camera here. It's a Sony 4K camera. So within about 4 months, we were a 2-camera, 2-angle live interview, very highly produced podcast, all because I took the jump and I had friends that kind of came to support me at first. And I didn't waste it. Like I took that seriously, bought the equipment back, gave it back better than when I found it, made sure that it was well taken care of, didn't have it for more than 24 hours, respected his time. My guests had them lined up, water when they came, all that, and the situation and the things booked. And because I didn't waste it, and along the way, I knew I wanted to do this for a long time, I started investing and bought my own stuff. And as you mentioned, here I am 4 years later, still recording podcasts. Haven't missed a week for almost 4 years. I've got over 165 episodes. And I think I must have recorded almost 190. So at the 200 mark, I'm throwing a party.
Well deserved, man. I can't wait till I get there. I've probably recorded roughly 52, so about a year's worth. And it's exciting, man, when you take the leap, because I was like you, I started thinking that I wanted to do it. And then it took me a year to actually start. And then as soon as I started, I was like, oh, okay, podcast equipment isn't that expensive. Like you can find good ones. You could figure out how to do it. And then I was scared to start on video for a while because like, I don't know, that type of fear that you have to go through. And then now just like it's routine, you jump on and you just have a conversation that you're going through your curiosities. I think you mentioned that earlier where you started the podcast in hopes to find mentorship and learn how to be better on live camera. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, okay, now I can do this for fun. And I've gotten better both at my day job, plus also this side thing. And then it all started with you having the ability to be vulnerable, to look into yourself and to have that self-awareness to be like, okay, I need to improve on this aspect. Yeah. Is that kind of what also started your ambition for The Modern Man?
Yeah, I think so. Ironically, The Modern Man was a sub-series of the podcast, but it was something that was brewing inside of me well before the podcast. The Modern Man was something that I want to say I had the initial idea of Modern Man probably shortly after college, because that was the first time in my life as a man, I just felt lost and misdirected. I just broke up with a girlfriend of 3+ years and I'm 23 years old. And, at the time, like, I remember I'm married now, but at this point I just broke up with my ex-girlfriend who was the girl I came closest to marrying before. And I just remember reflecting and how hard it was to end the relationship. And when I say end the relationship, there was no one cheated. It wasn't like we weren't getting along anymore. We just were going in different paths. Like something inside of me wanted more.
Mm-hmm.
She was ready to go and start a family and everything, but I wanted to build. And that drew us apart. And I actually had a relationship expert on my podcast not too long ago, which made me feel better about this being possible. But like literally breaking up with someone while you're in love with them. You know what I mean? Like you love this person so much, but you know you have to do something. You can't explain it, but you just got to do it for you. And that's pulling you in an opposite direction. So I remember breaking up with my ex with every intention of getting back with her when I solved three key areas of my life. Number one, I didn't like the amount of money I was making. I was stuck. Number two, I was living at home with my parents. And number three, I hated the job that I was working. I was miserable, so much so it put me in the hospital with an autoimmune disease. So when I decided, let me focus on myself. I remember telling my ex, I said, hey, I got to focus on me really quick. I got to work on me. That was probably, Sammy, one of the first things I did selfishly as a man. I got a lot of flack for it. But I also remembered feeling lost afterwards. Like, why is it so hard for me to put myself as a priority? Why is it so hard for me to like articulate what this thing is I'm hungry for? And even further, why is it so hard for people to understand? That's the first time I looked for guidance in terms of like, man, like help. And I had my father throughout my life. So I was blessed with that. I've had a mentor at the law firm that I was working with. I was blessed with that. But after me and my ex broke up, Sammy, within 6 months, I'm moving to Saginaw, Michigan in my job as a meteorologist, the dream job. Within 6 months, I moved out of my parents' house. Well, first I got a $5,000 raise at work, and then moved out of my parents' house. Then I got the job in Saginaw, Michigan, my dream job. I solved those three. But in those 6 months, as things do, she moved on.
Yeah.
Okay, that door closed, which was a blessing for both of us. But the door that opened was the adventure of growth, being hundreds of miles away from friends, family on my own, building a community and a group of men of my own. And then when I landed in Greenville, South Carolina, I started noticing other guys didn't have this. Other guys didn't have the father figure in their home growing up, or they didn't have a group of friends where they can kind of flat out be like, dude, I don't know if I'm okay, man. When I broke up with my ex, it was after I was in the hospital and I understood like the focus on mental health a little bit better. So I had a friend who I literally was like, dude, I don't know if I'm okay. Like I remember having conversations in the drive, and like I'm in the driver's seat, my buddy's in the passenger seat. We're parked in the parking lot of a Wendy's at like 1 o'clock in the morning. And it's like, bro, like, why do I still love this girl? I'm months removed. I'm in the best area of my life, but I keep going back and focusing on this. And he's like, dude, I think you need to let her go. Like the real talks that we don't share, but the real talks that I was thankful to have, because that was another friend of mine sitting in that parking lot. I don't know if it was a Wendy's parking lot, but it was, let's just say Bojangles, whatever it was. But sitting in that parking lot, him saying to me like, and this is Sammy, man, I'll be honest, this is like 1.5 years, 2 years after me and her broke up. This is me, quote unquote, living my best life to everybody else. Oh, you're on TV, you're making the most money you've ever made, you're in a new city, you're crushing it. Why am I still miserable? And I remember him looking at me like, Ted, man, you gotta let her go. You gotta go to the next one. This, the other thing. And he was another person who was standing up there with me on the day I got married, because he was one of those that fed truth into my heart when I didn't want to hear it.
Now a quick word for today's show's sponsor. I'm normally not a fan of nice clothes. I like comfort over style, especially because I like being active often. Habits 365 is a brand that does both. The reason I'm excited to partner with them is because their vision is in line with this podcast. Their whole message is to preach consistent improvement by creating and maintaining continuous habits 365 days a year. That sounds exactly like what I like to preach, 1% better every day. It also helps that they promote positivity around important topics like mental health and wellness, which is one of the 5 categories, as well as social justice and much more. The fact that they employ mostly millennials and are run by 2 people who are in their 20s, like myself, is an added bonus. If you're interested in supporting the show as well as getting some apparel, feel free to enjoy the code FINANCEZILLA for 15% off online purchases by using the link in the show notes. That's FINANCEZILLA for 15% off online purchases. Guys, Water is super important for maintaining physical health, one of the 5 categories of the Successful Millennials podcast. Doctors always recommend at least 8 cups a day, and for every cup of coffee or tea, you should probably add another cup of water. Throw in things like pre-workout, creatine, and the fact that everybody just has different hydration needs based on, their body weight and gender, physical activity, etc. You should probably drink well over that eight cups of water. Me personally, I drink like a gallon and a half a day. I just love water. I drink it with every meal. I drink it when I work out. I don't drink juices or anything else. That's why I'm excited to partner with the Coldest Water. They make water bottles that can preserve cold water and ice that won't even melt for 36 plus hours. Especially in the summertime heat like now, these bottles that come in different sizes are a great way to keep your water cold when running errands, hiking, or just so that you don't have to keep going to the fridge every now and then. Enjoy a personal code for 10% off our online purchases by going to the link in the bio and using the code FINANCEZILLA. That's FINANCEZILLA for 10% off online purchases. Now back to the show.
Yeah, that's the most important quality of friendships, in my opinion, is that last sentence you said, where you don't want to hear it, but sometimes you need to hear it, or all the time you really need to hear it, and you need a friend that's brave enough to say it, and you have to be okay to hear it and then really internalize it. But why is it, now that you've had these conversations, you've had the live events, you've obviously grown mentally in terms of your ability to withstand some of the different social norms that men have to go through that we just don't share? What have you learned, or what can you help teach people on getting open a little bit more, or even maybe even hearing from a friend instead of like the first immediate reaction seems to be making fun of them?
I would say this in terms of what I learned, man, is you got to be the first to go. And when I say the first to go, is like you got to be the vulnerable one. Like I've noticed this about men. We love helping each other. Oh, we love helping each other.
Problem solvers.
Like there's even a comedian I'm never going to forget. I forgot who he was. We were in Myrtle Beach at a comedy show, and he goes, "Man, you ladies hate each other. I'll show you. Dudes, look at the first person next to you and say what up." And you hear the crowd go, "Yeah, ladies. Yeah. Look at the girl you don't know and say something nice about her." And they're like, He's like, "You see what I'm talking about?"
Yeah.
But guys like to help each other. Like guys like to be needed. We, as men, we want to be needed. And I don't like to generalize, but this is, let's say, a majority. You know, I'm not going to generalize and say all, because I also say no man is a template. We all have to pick and choose different traits that we want to build ourselves and who we become. But what I learned is you need to go first. And so many of us, we love to help each other, but we don't want to look like we are the ones that need help. So we end up sizing each other up. We end up, I don't really know about this. We put on a bravado like we're great and we're perfect and we're good to go. Here's the picture I paint to kind of try and help guys understand vulnerability. When I was in high school, I played football, and I went to a Catholic school, which means we wore uniforms, a little blazer, tie, and everything. But on Fridays for game day, the football players got to wear their jerseys instead of the blazers. So everybody in school knew who the football players were. Here's an even higher ring on that is you have some of the football players, the running back, the linebackers, your boy. I was a cornerback, but I had a scuff on my jersey. But like whoever had the dirtiest and scuffiest jersey, and I'm not talking about grass stains. I'm talking about those rug burns, but those rope burns that are on the jerseys from like friction of like burning on fabric rubbing. Those are the burns and the scars that you see on the shoulders that show, oh man, he was in the game. He hit somebody. And the dudes that had the most scuffs on their shoulders and the most scuffed up jersey always got the most attention from the girls because they knew, oh, that dude got playing time. That dude was out there in the trenches. Now we grow up and we walk around with this clean suit of armor. If I'm about to go into battle, do I want advice from the dude with a clean suit of armor? Or do I want the dude who's walking with dents, scratches, gaps, and now like this dude looks beat up?
Yeah.
He's still standing and he's still coming through. I want to talk to that dude because the dirty armor, the kinks in his armor shows that he was in battle. It shows that he was out there getting it and he survived to tell the story. So many guys that are listening, stop walking around like you have a clean suit of armor and you don't have any vulnerabilities because no one's buying that.
Yeah.
I'm not buying it because I know the dents and the kinks in my armor. Sure, you want to hide the vulnerabilities from the enemy, but if you're going to walk around like you have clean armor, that just means you see everybody as the enemy. And a man who has nothing but enemies has no friends.
Yeah, I mean that's beautiful because I agree. Like the people who I feel like when you want to give advice, if you ever ask for advice, then all of a sudden you're like, okay, I'm not worthy of giving advice. Or I'm not worthy of helping somebody, or they might not think that I can help them because I have a deficiency or I have a problem in a different area that's totally unrelated in my life, which is not a smart way to think about it because no, like you said, nobody's perfect. Everybody has strengths in certain areas and weaknesses in others. So that's the whole point of sharing because you don't know what you're good at and you don't know what other people can potentially help you in. I think it's really important to share, but sharing first is always a little bit difficult. And I think that how do you do that without oversharing? Maybe some people always like keep your friends close, but your enemies closer, and don't overshare and let anybody know your deepest, darkest secret. Is a lot of another myth or misconception that a lot of people have.
Yeah, I would say it's about building, and I'm glad that you asked that question because that actually is the thing I wanted to touch on what you said. It's about building your board of advisors. Now, I don't walk into a Walmart and be like, I'm having struggles with addiction, you know, for all to hear. But so what I do is I cultivate those relationships. And what I mean by go first, right? Don't necessarily put all your issues or what you're struggling with on the table to everybody that's going to lend you an ear. What you want to do is you want to first cultivate a relationship that can facilitate that. You don't just throw the seed in a cup and say, okay, should grow. No, you put the soil in there, you water it, you nurture it, give it sunlight, and then it grows. Well, a relationship is the same thing. If you meet a guy and you have a camaraderie, or even you already have a group of friends that's more surface level than anything, that's the first step is, okay, listen, you have the guys that you go watch the game with. Maybe you have a softball team that you play with, right? You have some dudes who know you, but they don't really know you. We could be surrounded by so many people. We could be in a room full of people, but feel lonely because no one really knows what we're going through. Mm-hmm. So what I would say is first starting with those soft friendships, right? Those friendships that are acquaintances, you do things together, invite them to have a discussion in terms of like, hey man, can I pick your brain about something? Something as easy as that. Mm-hmm. Can I pick your brain about something? And it doesn't have to be earth shattering or anything crazy. It can honestly be like, can I pick your brain about something? I was trying to decide on if I should make this purchase or that purchase. I really want to do this for my wife in the future, but I'm not really sure what the best move for this would be. That it could be the smallest thing you might be deciding on what to get your wife for her birthday or something, right? But asking for that kind of advice is inviting this person to give you some feedback into an action in your life that's going to result in an outcome. So anyone who truly cares, what do you think is going to happen when the wife's birthday comes? How'd she like the gift you got? Mm-hmm. Did you get what I asked you to? She did. It was dope. And now you both enjoy the outcome of what happened. Friendship gets deeper. Friendship gets stronger. I'll also caveat it with this, because you mentioned someone asking for advice and might not feel equipped to help them in that realm, or what you might be good at this, you might not be good at that. Your board of advisors should also be diverse. And what I mean by that, I usually have somebody to call for any different area of my life that I'm struggling with. I had one good friend of mine who was a very successful business owner, still is very successful in business. And I've been spending a lot of time with him. And I remember my wife said something like, you've been spending a lot of time with, let's just say his name's Sam, right? You've been spending a lot of time with Sam. I'm like, yeah. And I'm like, she's like, well, what are you doing? I'm like, oh, he's mentoring me. I'm learning from him. Mm-hmm. She goes, yeah, but Sam spends like all these nights away from home, traveling. Mm-hmm. Sam is never really with his wife. Like, what kind of family life does Sam have? I'm like, I don't really know. I mean, he seems happy, but I don't know. She goes, well, then why are you having mentorship from him? And I looked at her, I said, because if I'm having relationship problems, I don't call Sam. Yeah. I call Frank, who has an amazing marriage from what I can tell. And I pick his brain because I want a marriage like that. And I have a good friendship with Frank. So if I have a problem with my wife or relationship, I call Frank. Mm-hmm. But our relationship's good, so I don't need a lot of Frank right now. If you check my bank account, I can use some extra scalability in my business. So I'm calling Sam.
Yeah, there you go.
but that's kind of the example of like, again, no man is a template, right? I might be able to give somebody really good advice on forecasting weather. But if you ask me how to play soccer, you might want to call somebody else, man. That's not my area of expertise. And somebody who's self-aware would also be able to tell you that. If you're asking somebody for business advice and they're not ahead of you in business, maybe you shouldn't be asking them. And also, if you're asking somebody for some advice in an area in your life that doesn't already have what you want in that area, maybe you should find someone else too. So that is kind of a double-edged sword in terms of, build those friendships, but also build the friendships with the people who have things in their lives that you would like to obtain one day, or you admire and you respect, because you are the sum of your friends. You have 5 millionaires around you, you become the sixth. If you have 5 people around you with an aspect of their lives that you truly admire and hope to learn from osmosis, set them up, bring them close, and then use those different attributes into your personal avatar and watch the life you end up creating. Guarantee you, you won't be disappointed.
100% agreed. And we've talked about that in previous episodes as well, the importance of surrounding yourself with a group, or like everybody uses the word networking, but your network and your close friends is even more important than your extended network. But those
I like
people
board of advisors.
Board of advisors is a better term that I'm going to steal from now on, but
go for it.
So talk to me a little bit more about some of the other mental health issues or things that need to be more awareness that need to be spread for men. I know suicide rates are way higher, 3.5 times, I think is the last survey that I saw. 3.5 times more men than women commit suicide in America each year, which is, it's crazy. I mean, suicide is not good for any gender, obviously, but it's just the fact that it's another statement that it's not talked about enough. So what are some of the other issues that men sometimes experience?
One, I would say, is isolation. I say that off the bat because, I mean, the mission of modern man is, connecting men in pursuit of their potential, connecting, because the first problem I see is solving that isolation. You mentioned, 3.5 more times than women, men commit suicide. 70% of the suicides in 2018 were men. And the reason is also, too, psychologists have studied married men and asked about their emotional network and their support. And it's usually just their wives, while their wives say, oh, it's their husband, their friends, their parents, and this, that, the other thing. So just based on how we operate, men tend to have smaller networks and women tend to have more support groups. And imagine trying to tell a man, oh, you need a support group. No, it's you need to get away from isolation. And when you couple the isolation with substance abuse, I think addiction is also something that disproportionately impacts men. I think when you look at the traumas and the signals of mental health, it disproportionately impacts men because we are more isolated. We are less in tune with our emotions. We don't articulate as well. And it's not a problem like, oh, we have a problem we can't articulate. We're not taught to. We're not taught to articulate our emotions. We're taught to suppress them. We're taught to suck it up. We're taught to, big boys don't cry, be the rock, be the provider, the protector. And if you're always on and you're always the provider, the protector, and the rock, and not crying and everything, where do you get to lay your head down? So number one, I think isolation. Number two, substance abuse is something that a lot of us men go through and deal with. And number three, emotional literacy, understanding these feelings. Because, I mean, for anybody that's listening that's like me, emotions used to come down to one of two things. I'm happy or I'm mad. I'm happy or I'm mad. That's it. Are you sad? No, I'm just mad. I'm pissed. Why are you pissed? Because it didn't work out the way I wanted to. Aren't you just disappointed? No, I'm pissed.
Yeah.
Sure. There might be an inkling of disappointment, but I automatically sum it up to pissed. But disappointment, it's a different emotion than pissed off. It's a different emotion than angry. Disappointment is, okay, disappointment is the lack of expectations being met. Okay, what were my expectations? This. What actually happened? That. What was the gap between the two? This. Okay, was it accurate of me to have that expectations? No. Oh, was the outcome more in the norm of what should have happened and happened? Yes. So in the future, should you maybe gauge your expectations and not have so high expectations on the certain outcome that you desired? Yeah. So next time you might not be as disappointed. Guess what? That's the process of healing. If I said I'm mad, I don't get there.
Yeah, you don't ask any of those questions. It's just mad. What am I going to do to get retaliation or revenge or get even? It's not good to stop yourself. That's why, I mean, I've mentioned this maybe 1,000 times on the podcast, but the rubber band that I wear a lot, anytime I have some sort of self-defeating anger or go down the rabbit hole of emotional distress, I snap the rubber band. It kind of stops that emotional process for like a split second. I then focus on the pain of the rubber band snapping my wrist. And then I'm like, okay, let me use that to take a step back, process my emotion, ask those questions. And more often than not, it becomes like, oh, okay, I can either manage my expectations better, put in more work, or see that I inevitably didn't do what I needed to do to get it done.
And that's so huge because as men, we are also very process focused, mission driven, and we need to know these are the steps and what to do, right? So what you just described right there is the perfect rewiring behavior that so many of us need to go through and have to intentionally go through. But the fact that you do it is the first step a lot of us need to take in is the belief in the rearranging of our habits and our core beliefs. If we don't think we can change, we don't. But if we have the belief that we can change, then we are like, oh, okay, how do I do it? And what you're describing right there is the perfect kind of reframing and reprogramming action that instills a new kind of neurological pathways, neuroplasticity. You can reshape your brain. You can reshape your habits and build a new future by changing your actions of today. But when you don't believe that, you're stuck in this limbo. You're stuck in this merry-go-round and not going anywhere. Get off the merry-go-round, put the rubber band on your wrist or whatever you need to do, and then start taking those steps. And my gosh, you'll be surprised at some of the changes you'll see within yourself. I mean, when I started articulating feelings, and here's the thing is, I am still 100% highly amateur at this. Like, my wife still gets frustration, like, what are you feeling? I'm like, I don't know. But I'm at least at the level to be like, hey, babe, I'm feeling something. I don't know how to express it right now, but I'm going to tell you I'm feeling something. Let's explore it. That switch alone is so much farther than me shutting down and just being like, hey, you okay? Yeah, I'm fine.
Yeah.
And then just what I used to do, just muscle through it. Let me hit the gym. Let me just blow off some steam. I'll be fine in a couple of days. I just gotta let it go. No, man, that's not blowing off steam and letting it go. It's letting it fester, bake, cook, flipping the bird too much, putting it back and overcooking it and eating it well done. It doesn't go anywhere and it doesn't sit well. It's got to come out eventually.
Yeah. And most of the time it comes out all at once and you get like explosive tendencies, which is something that everybody needs to avoid. So we mentioned talking to friends and building that board of advisors. I mentioned the rubber band and some of the tips that I use. And you mentioned that just saying that you're feeling something, just getting that self-awareness out. What is another third tip that you would recommend to somebody they could just apply today, right after this podcast ends? I know they're probably doing errands or shopping or doing something and they maybe not have time to write it down, but just to activate it just today to figure out how to process their emotions.
I got it right here. You can't see this on the video for those listening. Water, right? Water. Hydrate yourself. And when I say hydrate yourself, matter of fact, another guy who not only stood next to me on my wedding day, but during the ceremony, not the reception afterwards, the ceremony, while me and my wife are standing up there, I specifically asked him to say some words. What he said when we first were hanging out, and we were best friends to this day, he got me a vodka water. We were out, and he said, to hydrate yourself. The advice I would tell guys right now is drink water and hydrate yourself. Why? For clarity, for productivity, efficiency, get some sleep. A lot of times we can't do the work necessary for self-recovery because we're too tired, fogged up, bogged down, and unproductive. We're sleep deprived, we're exhausted, we're dehydrated, we're vitamin D deficient. There's so many things wrong with us. How can we start fixing ourselves if we didn't take care of our health, right? So the first advice I'd be like, man, start drinking water, hydrate yourself. And when I say hydrate yourself, man, you can get a $20 gallon bottle from Amazon. That's what I did. It even has the timestamps on it. And you start doing that. What kind of change is that going to do, Ted? Try it for a week and tell me. Because when you have that clarity, you're hydrated, you're getting better sleep. Hydration will help your sleep. You get better sleep. You're not groggy and tired. You're more productive at work. You're going to find more time. So I'm strategic in how I'm delivering this, because what I really want you to do is sit down in a chair, close your eyes, and just meditate. And I know most people are like, I don't have time. Well, I just told you how to make time. Be more productive by getting more sleep, drinking more water, being hydrated, maybe improve your diet, but that might be too much to ask. So let's start with consuming enough water, getting enough rest. Your productivity should open up a window of time for you to sit down and meditate, because what you really need to do, the irony of wanting to solve male isolation is we also don't sit in silence with ourselves long enough. We're lonely because people don't really know us, but we're never alone because we're constantly getting stimulated by the phones, FaceTime, Netflix, relationships, friends, jobs. It's the other thing. I mean, Sammy, when was the last time you were able to sit down in silence for more than 10 minutes?
Yeah.
If you don't do that intentionally, it doesn't happen. So do what you got to do. If you don't like the water and the sleep aspect, productivity, if you just want to carve out the time, give yourself 10 to 15 minutes a day right now to meditate and observe your thoughts. You might not like it all. I'll tell you that right now. You might not like everything, and that's okay, because I didn't like everything I found out about myself. I still don't like things I'm finding out about myself. But that's where the work begins, man. That's when you can start looking at, okay, here's the canvas. Here's what it looks like. Here's the paintbrush in my hand. I finally understand somewhat of the picture. Let's start painting more and see what happens.
Yeah, man, I absolutely love that. Anybody who listens to this podcast knows one of my partnerships is with the coldest water. I love water, drink a gallon and a half a day. So use the code in the bio of obviously of all the show notes and get 10% off on the gallon of water, whatever bottle size you want. I mean, I have a quart size that I just keep filling up. Water is amazing because it helps you. I mean, even you go to the bathroom so much more, you're going to process fluids a lot better. Your digestive system is going to be better. Your physical health will be better. I mean, I can go on and on about my love of water, but
I sweat all the time.
I know.
And I don't say that as a bad thing. Like Jess is like, I was at the gym and we just started. She's like, damn, babe, why are you sweating? I'm like, because my body is efficient at getting rid of toxins, and I'm doing a workout right now, and I'm processing very efficiently right now. Sweat is a sign of good nutrition, and it's a sign of, okay, your body is doing exactly what it's supposed to do to stay cool. Yes, some of us sweat a little bit too much. I feel you, but I'm thankful for it.
Same. Ted, I absolutely love this conversation. For those people who want to listen to more on No Rain, No Rainbows, or find out when the upcoming conferences, where can they find you?
Yeah, appreciate that opportunity. So my handle on Instagram is The Real Phaeton Forecast. The Real, as it's spelled, Phaeton. The number 4, KAST. The Real Phaeton Forecast. That's me on Instagram. I'm Ted Phaeton on Facebook, LinkedIn. I'm on Twitter as Phaeton Forecast, or you can just search Ted Phaeton. And you can go to phaetonforecast.com. That's the one-stop shop for everything that I'm doing. I have my blog on there. I have guest blogs from other people on there. My podcast is on there. And then through my links, you can find The Modern Man, or you can go directly to the website, themodernmanshow.com, or you can definitely find us on Instagram, LinkedIn, and all those by searching The Modern Man Show. We're also on YouTube too, The Modern Man Show.
Awesome. I will have links to all of those, of course, because I think it's really important that people need to learn more about it. That self-awareness we mentioned multiple times is the first step to make any sort of changes. So you have to know that you have a problem. You have to know where that problem lies, and then you have to want to change it, and then you got to change it. So I love this conversation, Ted. I really appreciate your time today, man.
Anytime, Sammy. Thanks so much for having me on. I love the conversation too. So if you need me back anytime, let me know. I'd be happy to jump in deeper.
Will do. Thanks.
That concludes another episode of the Successful Millennials podcast. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this episode and which tip or trick you picked up on that you'll implement after listening to today's episode. Please don't forget to leave a like or subscribe on whichever podcast streaming platform you're listening to right now. Obviously, we're on all of them. And let me know what topics you'd like to learn more on or ask a guest on. And my email is going to be in the show notes. It's financezilla@gmail.com. That's the best way to reach out to me. If you have Instagram and you prefer to reach out there, I'm also quite active and I'll respond to DMs. It is at financezilla. Again, both of those will be in the show notes. Now, if you're wondering on how I got to where I'm at, where I was able to retire from corporate and kind of do this as well as invest and trade in the stock market, and you would like to learn more, kind of take control of your finances and therefore take control of your life and being able to do what you want to do, being financially independent, reach out to me via either of those ways and ask for that 30-minute free strategy consultation session. The link again will be in the show notes for that, and we can talk about how to live the life you want to live and make money doing it, as well as be comfortable and happy. That's, I think, the goal of everything. That's the reason why I started this podcast and why I do this consulting business. So reach out, let me know if I can help, and apply via the link in the show notes. Until then, talk to you guys next week.